All right, so now we're going to go on to nerves and nerve plexuses. Plexi. Plexuses. All right, so anyway, you'll see. So let's see. Let me hide me so you can actually see this. All right, so basically what we're talking about, so here's our spinal cord, and we're going to have this, we've already mentioned the dorsal root and then the ventral root coming off the spinal cord, right? Remember the dorsal root is bringing incoming sensory information, and the ventral root is taking outgoing motor information. They'll come together once they get past that sort of that vertebral foramen area, and then they'll become a nerve. Okay. So these spinal nerves, they'll form, again, that dorsal ventral roots. You'll have the spinal cords that branch into dorsal and ventral ramices, so those are just branches. So the dorsal ramus will supply the skin muscles of the back. So you can see the dorsal ramus, like once it comes out here, the spinal nerves will split, goes toward the back to supply, well, the back. The ones that come ventrally will supply the anterior trunk and limbs. And then you'll have what are known as the meningeal branches as well. So those will supply the meninges, so the dura mater, pia mater, those, the vertebra themselves, as well as any kind of blood vessels in the area. Okay. All right, so nerve plexus, and we kind of touched upon this before, I believe. But basically, when you have the nerves coming off your different, or in between your vertebra, they don't just kind of come out as a single string. What they'll do is they'll actually branch and they'll kind of combine with one another. All right. So basically, the ventral ramices or rami of spinal nerves will form networks or plexuses. Okay. And then we have 4 different ones. We have a cervical plexus, a brachial plexus, lumbar, as well as sacral. All right. So the cervical plexus, this will supply, not surprisingly, it's coming out from the neck, so it'll supply skin, muscles, the head, neck, upper part of the shoulders. Okay. It'll also supply the diaphragm. Now, this is where this gets important. So basically, the phrenic nerve is made up of the nerves coming out of C3, C4, and C5, right? They'll kind of, split apart and come back together to form this phrenic nerve. That phrenic nerve goes all the way down to the diaphragm. All right. If you end up breaking your neck and damaging that spinal cord somewhere above the C, like in the C2, C1, like very high up on your neck, basically you're going to kill off or inhibit any kind of signals going down to this phrenic nerve. And if you can't have innervation of the diaphragm, you can't breathe by yourself. You have to be put on a ventilator. Okay. So that's one of the reasons why, and this is generically true as well. So the higher up the damage is, the more severe that the consequences are, right? So again, here's that cervical plexus. It gives you an idea of where it is in relation to the body. And again, that phrenic nerve is made up of the C3 through C5 nerves coming out from the spinal cord. Right, as they split, so C3, C4, C5, these will all come together to produce the phrenic nerve, and that'll travel down to your diaphragm. Right. You also have a brachial plexus, so you can see these is from C5 to T1. So again, that's kind of coming out here at the base of your neck, just above the clavicle. Those will form different nerves that then radiate down your arm. So, and you've seen some of these in labs. So you have the axillary nerve. You'll have something called the musculocutaneous nerve, right? The ulnar nerve going all the way down to the ulna. You'll have the median nerve going right down the middle, right? You'll have radial nerve coming down toward the radius. All right, and then you have a lumbar plexus. So you can see this from L1 to L5. Again, and this is kind of nice. So you have to see the femoral and I believe the obturator nerve in lab. So this gives you an idea. So you can see the L2 coming out, splitting, the L3 coming out, splitting, coming together, and L4 coming out, splitting, and then all of these will come together to actually form that femoral nerve. Okay. And the same idea with that obturator. So you can kind of see innervations coming from the L3 and L4. And I guess a little bit still one coming from the L2 as well. And then we'll see this down in the sacral area as well. Same idea. So this large nerve that you see here, this is the sciatic nerve, right? That's what that is. So all of these are going to come together to form that very large nerve. So here's the upshot of that, right? Because these nerves, again, they're sending outgoing motor input, or I should say motor output, and they're also carrying sensory input, right? So because they split and they kind of go out to a specific area, based on numbness over a skin surface, you can tell where there's potential damage in the spinal cord. Okay, so again, damage of regions of the spinal cord can be distinguished by numbness over a dermatome region. So you can see here that if a person's complaining about numbness, or maybe they have a slipped disc or something, right, and it's putting pressure. So if they're feeling numbness over particularly this portion of their thigh, that's a very good indication that there's damage. That slipped disc is in the L2 area, for example. Okay, or if all of a sudden they're feeling like numbness over this part of their forearm, right down here, all the way down to their thumb, maybe they have a pinched nerve up in their neck in that C6 area, right? Or if they're feeling numbness in the C3, again, you know, and you can kind of see in the back here, that would indicate that, oh, maybe I slept weird and I'm pinching a nerve. Right? Hopefully that makes sense to you. Now, for a lecture exam, I do not expect you to know these broken out as T1, T2, T3, T4, or that specifically. I expect you to be able to know it to the level of the color-coded areas. Meaning, if I tell you that you feel numbness in your shoulder, you should know that that means that there's some damage to the cervical region of the spinal cord. You feel numbness in your hand, you should know that that means that you have damage to part of the cerebral area of your spinal cord. You feel numbness in your chest area or by your belly button, you should know that means that there's damage to the thoracic area of the spinal cord. You feel numbness in the anterior portion of the thigh, you should know that that means that you have damage to the lumbar portion of your spinal cord. Does that make sense? Or numbness in your butt. It's damaged, or there's damage to that to the sacral area of your spinal cord. Okay, so just to the level of the color-coded regions. All right. So just some common disorders that you'll run into. If you ever hear of this term neuritis, it simply means an inflammation of the nerves, and it can be due to several different things. Injury, vitamin deficiency can also cause neuritis, so inflammation to occur. Poisons can, toxins can, right? Shingles, you've probably seen or heard of shingles, right? Recently they've had lots of commercials on TV about the shingles vaccine. So basically what happens is that chickenpox virus will actually travel up the sensory neurons, and it'll kind of hibernate, if you will, in that dorsal root ganglion. All right. So when someone has shingles, I'm just going to go back to this dermatome. So when someone has shingles, usually it comes in like a stripe or in a region. So when let's say you get that shingles, that scaliness, right, that comes with shingles, right, in this T7 area, doctors actually know that, oh, well, that virus was lurking in the dorsal root ganglion in the T7 area. It's that specific. Okay. So anyway, so it's very painful. The skin coloration is blisters. I mean, bad, worse than chickenpox. It's pretty painful for people. You know, it takes a few weeks to get over. Polio is not something that we see in this country anymore, although it made a comeback in Europe, although it had been eradicated forever. So people, for some reason, got on that anti-vaccination bandwagon, didn't vaccinate their kids, and then the kids got polio. And it's something that's been gone for decades, has made a comeback in some areas. Basically, it's a viral infection. That's why you get a vaccine for it. And it causes the death of motor neurons. So you kill off the motor neurons, the person can't move their muscles, right? And then basically one of the neurons that it'll kill off will be that phrenic nerve. Can't breathe. So people who have polio, they would have to put them in iron lungs. And I don't know if I have an image of that. I don't, but here are people that have these children have polio. So you can see their bodies are all distorted. They actually can't move body parts very well, simply because those neurons are not functioning properly. You can see they have leg braces to help them stand up, to help them walk, but otherwise they can't move. And there's great atrophy going on in their legs as well because the muscles aren't receiving the signal, so they're simply atrophying. Okay. You can also watch a video on polio. It's a woman that is in an iron lung, which is the old way that they dealt with it. So basically, an iron lung is this, I don't know, it's like a tube almost that you completely put your entire body in, except like your head is sticking out, and then again you're totally paralyzed. But it has a billows on it that causes negative and positive pressure in that chamber, which then causes your chest to like rise and fall, which allows you to breathe. It's pretty dramatic, and at some point there were entire auditoriums and wards of hospitals just full of iron lungs until we were able to eradicate polio. All right, so that ends this chapter. Whew, that's a lot of information. So don't forget to take that quiz, and as always, if you have any questions, let me know. Again, more than happy to explain them, or you can always ask in lab as well. All right, see you later.